Hey everyone, I'm Patrick Jones, and welcome to episode 83 of That Gives Me Anxiety. I really resisted the urge to do 83 anxiety, but did I resist it if I just put you through that? I'm so sorry. Just getting back from a whole lot of losing in beach volleyball. Jamie and I put together a team here in Charleston. The other team's a lot better. Simple as that. But it's a lot of fun, and man, I'm so tired. Jeez Louise, it's just jumping around. I mean, when I guess the other teams are probably not as tired, but when you're running around because the ball goes God knows where, you're a little bit more tired. Not to mention some stressful moments with the party we've been planning for Jamie and I's wedding. Just hanging in there. Just hanging in there. But I've got a great episode lineup here. Today, our anxiety is caused by working for clients, right? Whether you're a freelancer, you're working in a creative field, you put everything together, and then a client tells you, what if we do this the other way? That's what a client sounds like. Sorry, it's just the losing that's on my mind. To help me out this episode, I interviewed one of my good friends, Rajiv Fernandez, who's a small business owner and has worked as a creative and as a freelancer for many years, as well as Caitlin Durning, who owns her own social media business. And so, yeah, we just discuss anxiety related to having things like there's just a lot of a lack of control, I think is the best way to describe it when you're working for clients, and how these two people who are successful manage it. I think there's a lot of power in learning how other people have done it, and you see what works for you and what might not work for you. And this is going to be a two-parter, so this is part one, and I think part two will likely be 2 weeks from now. It might be a little gap of going on a little trip here. Going to Minneapolis to hang out with Jamie's grandma, so I think there's going to be a little gap while I'm doing family stuff. But before we get to the interview, I just want to remind you, if you're liking the show, please remember to rate it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening to it on. You can check the show out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Don't forget about my partnership with Pure Spectrum CBD, who offer the promo code AnxietyPod. And if you want to make a donation to the show, you can through the Buy Me a Coffee link, which is in the description. So yeah, thank you so much to Rajiv and Caitlin, and thank you so much to you for listening. Enjoy. Joining me now on the podcast to talk about anxiety related to working for clients, I have my good friend Rajiv Fernandez. Rajiv, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. It's so great to be talking to you, and we're on Zoom, so I can see your face. So it's nice to reconnect this way. In addition to our daily texting thread that can never see the light of day. But
yeah, I was gonna say
it gives me anxiety if that thing ever leaks. Yeah, we'll be in trouble. Just kidding.
Right.
It's all good things. All good things.
Well, yeah, it is all good things. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it is nice to see your face. You're an extremely handsome man outside of just reading your text. So yeah. And like I said, today's episode is on anxiety related to working for clients. And so you've had a few jobs where you'd be working in like a creative forum that would involve like client feedback. So I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself a little bit to the audience and sort of talk about, all the jobs you have had, just a little background.
So I'm kind of doing a lot of things right now. I'm trained as an architect, so I have my own architecture practice, and that's primarily my main income generator. Then I also teach in the interior design department at the new school. And the nice thing about that is it's in the continuing ed department. So all the students are kind of mulling a career change, and this is a good way for them to explore different fields that they might want to really jump into, which is kind of exactly what I did. So beyond just teaching them the instructional material, I can also give them some life advice that I've been able to
be like me, kids.
Yeah, exactly. like, except try to make more money with your games. Then I also have a startup company. We're a platform to educate and empower kids based on identity. And we are using narrative from US history to tell that. So basically, we're telling kids the stories that they forgot to teach us growing up. It's been a very purpose driven venture and something that's helped me become more comfortable in my own identity. And there are many times where I have to be open about myself, and as uncomfortable as that might be, I realize it's the representation that I'm trying to create that I didn't have growing up. So that's the something I would like to make into a full-time venture. But at the time, we're having just the growing pains of young companies, and we're learning a lot in the process.
Absolutely. Yeah, I connect with you on that in many ways as you talk on my podcast, which is my side job here. But also, sometimes it's very difficult to reveal anything like super personal, but that's sort of like what I'm trying to change, right? And so that how difficult it is like kind of the point. So yeah, that's awesome that you're doing that. And I don't think you mentioned the names. It's Historicons.
Historicon, yeah,
Yeah.
historicons, historic icons. My artist moniker is Little Icon, so I'm like, how can I like implement icon into this? And we're using stories from history. We're letting kids know that there are people that look like you, no matter how different you feel, and we just kind of put those together, and that's how we came up with historicons.
Perfect. Yeah, that's
And it's
awesome.
trademarked.
Oh, nice. Good job with that. I got to work on that for this podcast. That reminds me.
Can you just
So,
trademark the word anxiety?
yeah.
I hear every other person being like, my anxiety is so very, very in the news right now.
Yeah, seriously. So as a architect, you were working for a firm and then now you're a freelancer. That's correct, right? So
Correct.
what is it like working with clients in in architecture? Is it, because my perspective in working in video for clients is that the client typically thinks they know what they want, but doesn't quite understand how things are done or why we do things a certain way. So I'm curious if that's your experience with architecture.
Yes, definitely. When I went out on my own, I was also pursuing another creative outlet, which was my illustration career, which eventually led into Historicons. I knew that a lot of my creative energy I'd be putting into illustration. So I made a conscious decision that the types of projects I would take on would not involve a full design scope. That means
Hmm.
like choosing materials, taking the client to like select stone, coming up with multiple design schemes for them. I knew the amount of effort and sweat that goes into that. And for me, it just didn't make sense in order for me to maintain my sanity.
Yeah.
So I made that conscious decision saying the only types of projects I'm going to take on are jobs that need to be filed with the Department of Buildings. So more of like the less glamorous side of architecture, and it's kind of very like objective type of work that I'd be doing.
Hmm.
So that's something I'm very like upfront with potential clients. And the nice thing is a lot of my colleagues, they're the opposite. They want to take on that design scope. I mean, after all, that is what we're trained to do. So it's nice where if they have clients like, oh, we just need this filed with the city, they'll pass that project on to me. And then I'll pass them on jobs where I'm like, oh, this is too much scope for me to take on. And most of my clients, I get through referrals and they know what they want to do. They're working with contractors I've worked with before. And so they just really need to get city agency approvals. And that's where I come in and help them. So basically, creating a niche for myself and being very specific about the type of work I do is very beneficial in creating a sustaining business. I remember there was a time when I first started out and I was trying to take on these design jobs because that's what I was used to.
Hmm.
And I was just burning myself out because I'd be working from home, staying up till like working from like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and just being very inefficient with my time. And I knew that wasn't going to be sustaining for myself. So
Hmm.
I had to make some conscious decisions and some sacrifices, but overall, my anxiety levels definitely dropped and my quality of life raised.
That's awesome. Yeah, setting the boundaries seems to be such an important aspect of, I mean, juggling all the things that you're currently juggling. I mean, my goodness. So the times that you were working on more design intense projects, would it be, how would it feel if like let's say a client chooses one stone and then decides well down the road that they want to go another direction? Would that throw you up? Because that would, I mean, that feels like at a much more intense scale than in my experience, right? If they want certain graphics to be green and now they want them to be blue, or they want them to change the character to be like a different demographic or something, that could feel so heavy. I'm curious how that has felt for you.
Yeah, so what I do is I put it all into a contract, a written agreement. This is something that I learned from just business people in general, is you need to always protect yourself from doing all this extra work with when you're not being compensated for it. So
Mm-hmm.
really putting value to the work that you do and outlining it for someone in an agreement. I think that's just the best way to avoid any conflict. And I think it reduces anxiety in both ends because you're like, everyone knows what they're going into. So I put into like, for example, if there's like they want to create a design change, I say like after the initial approval, anything you want to do is going to be an additional service. So just being very clear, just clearly defining what is included with your proposal versus what is not, I think just sets expectations to where they should be.
Yeah, that's great. Having good communication is extremely important, and yeah, setting boundaries.
Yeah,
I
and one thing is, architects are notorious for having extremely hard work ethics and being compensated not at all for it. And you see that there is a trend that's happening where a lot of workers at architectural firms are starting to unionize because they're not being compensated or treated well for the work and the hours they're putting in. And it's an industry-wide problem. And I've noticed that the younger generations that's coming into the field now is being more adamant about maintaining their work-life balance. And I feel like that's something that my era really started to kind of lay the grassroots for, and to see it being expected now, I think is just progress in that field. And when I kind of, my entire life, I always wanted to be an architect. And
mhm.
then when I kind of decided, oh, let me take a step out of it, it made it easier seeing how toxic the field could be. And I wanted to make sure that the majority of my day that I spend working is actually driven by some purpose in my life. Like I have like a large goal to make the world a better place, and designing kitchens for rich people wasn't doing it. So as long as there's purpose behind what you're doing for the majority of your time, I think that also helps alleviate anxiety because you're working towards a larger goal.
I love that. Yeah. Also, good for you for, as we get older, I feel like I could sense like a grumpiness in my own self as I get older, but good for you to see progress for like the next generation coming up and not be like, back in my day, we worked from 9 to 9 and like,
Right.
yeah.
And I think one thing is, this is gonna sound like blunt, but it's like the moment you kind of stop caring about something also helps alleviate stress. And I think, no, let me rephrase that. I think it's when you put things into perspective that helps alleviate stress. Because
Yeah.
before like when the pandemic hit, I said, listen, if I don't meet this deadline, no one's gonna die. So there are larger problems out there to worry about. And I feel like a lot of people have started to kind of realize that. But yeah, I used to kill myself if I wouldn't make a certain deadline, even when I was working on my own.
Hmm.
But now I mean, I think I had a good work ethic because one, the architecture field kind of drives it into, and two, I'm a child of immigrants. So we are just like used to doing a lot of work and getting the job done on time.
Hmm.
But once I put it into perspective, saying like, okay, no one's gonna die if I take like an extra day to finish this. And I think that resonates with clients as well. That they're like, okay, yeah, there are bigger things in life, but we can see this person's working and they're trying to get the work accomplished. I don't know, I'm kind of losing my train of thought there,
No,
but
no, no, it makes perfect sense.
yeah,
Yeah, it
uh,
goes back to what you were saying, like throughout, the importance of boundary setting and good communication. I've known you maybe 10 years, maybe, which
yeah,
makes
I
me
think
feel old.
so.
Yeah, wow. And I've noticed a
Well, you know what?
change.
It was, yeah, well, we met through the improv scene, and I started
Yeah,
taking those classes to get away from the toxic office that I was working in at the time. So,
pretty much the same.
you
Yeah.
know, being able to distract your mind from what's causing you stress is something that's smart. Like I'm actually doing that right now. Even I'm taking a course at the new school in the continuing ed department where I teach, just to help the creative juices start flowing again.
That's awesome. Yeah, but I've noticed this change in you in that I feel like you definitely were not setting boundaries and you seemed a bit more anxious and now you're so like calm and collected and you're communicating well with people you're working with and you're setting boundaries to take care of yourself. If you feel comfortable, I'd love to hear a little bit about that like transition. Did you just like hit your limit and feel like something's got to change?
Yeah, for sure. Part of it was just being more comfortable in my own identity as a brown queer man.
Hmm.
That's something that I never really confronted before. And I've written a few articles as of late about identity and how it kind of plays a role in my business and in trying to create representation out there. And that's allowed me to kind of alleviate some anxiety and stresses that I had before. Also, seeing a therapist has really helped. And it's ironic because I am the son of a psychiatrist. So,
Hmm.
we always applauded like seeking help for mental health. But it took me so long to actually do it because I think there's being an Indian immigrant, a child of Indian immigrants, there's always like this little stigma about getting help for your mental health.
Mm.
And also being the child of a doctor, it's like, oh, well, my father takes care of people who are sick, but I'm not sick. But finally taking the steps to talk my feelings out, when you speak it, it makes it, you realize it's not as bad as you're making it in your head. And it's just like I always describe it as like I have these weights on my shoulder. So as soon as I say something, the weight gets taken off. And then I have more flexibility to move at that point. And
That's a great metaphor. Yeah.
and I've noticed that whenever I mention I'm in therapy, and I've done this everywhere from in my work situations to just being out with friends. Other people say like, "Oh yeah, my therapist said this," and then that just breaks this whole wall where communication just opens up on a deeper level,
I
and I
started
think that
therapy a
builds
month
trust.
ago.
And Luis,
Yeah.
good job,
Sorry to
congratulations.
interrupt, but I was like,
It's
I did, that was felt like the right time to mention that. I can't believe I waited this long.
yeah,
I had a
and the
session
way
this
that
morning and it was fantastic.
oh, I'm so happy to hear that. And the way that I approach it is, there are times when you need mental health help on a deeper level where that requires like medication, things like that. And luckily, I'm not at that point, but I approach it as preventative
Yeah.
healthcare. We exercise and stuff to make sure our heart's in good shape. So seeing a therapist, make sure that our head's in good shape. So I
Absolutely.
think that's something, and you know what? My first therapist I had was absolutely wonderful. We were together for a year before he left to take another job. So I was kind of in flux for about a year, just like trying a few and then not seeing a therapist for like a month at a time. And I noticed, my friends noticed that I was getting a little bit more anxious and volatilely, not volatility, and re reacting in like unhealthy manners. Like
Yeah, just
as
like a
I'm
little
drinking a little bit
agitated
more,
at
yeah,
times. Yeah.
exactly. I'd snap easier. And then as soon as I started seeing a therapist again, that all dissipated. So I realized with your good friends, you can talk, but sometimes it's just a lot easier to tell it to a stranger who you're most likely not going to hang out with. And that just relieves a lot of tension and anxiety. So I
Absolutely.
definitely recommend everyone. It works for me. It may not work for you, but I think it's worth trying it out. What's the worst
Absolutely.
that could happen? It doesn't work, and you stop doing it.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all that. Yeah, it's great to see like where you're at as your friend. You just seem in such like a well-adjusted and like happy place in your life, and I mean, hey, that's what do you want more for your friends than that, right? Like,
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
yeah. Well, to get another
And it makes
perspective. Oh,
it
sorry,
makes
what
me
were you saying?
happy to see. So it makes me happy to see that you're finally getting married.
Yeah, I know. For background, Rajiv on this group text that we mentioned has been I had seemingly worried about when I would actually get married. Won't give me
We were more worried that we wouldn't be invited to it.
no, come on. I gotta get you invited. Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, so for another perspective on this discussion, I also want to let the audience know that I interviewed Caitlin Durning, who owns her own social media company. And so now I think it's time to go to that clip. Can we talk? I know you've got a lot on your plate. You've got work, you've got friends, you've got family, pets, you've got the people that you make small talk with at the coffee shop or gym. You've got that bird that you see when you wake up every morning outside your window that you've projected things onto. Look at that bird. Doesn't even love its family, it's always by itself. You do that. Everyone does that. Point is, you've got a lot on your plate. Well, that's why there's Instacart, to take a little bit off your plate. Using Instacart, you search for all your favorite foods and things that you need from the grocery store, all online, all while you're looking at that bird, wondering why it hasn't called its mom. And they deliver it to you. They go to the store and do the shopping for you. And they can deliver it in as fast as an hour. And you can sign up by clicking the link in the description, wherever you're listening or watching. And that's a great way of supporting the show. So it's a great way of supporting this show. It's a great way to make your life a little bit easier because we all know that you have so much going on, like wondering whether that bird judges you back. Joining me now on the podcast to talk about anxiety related to working with clients or working for clients, I have small business owner Caitlin Durning. Caitlin, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, we were talking briefly before we started recording here about how even mentioning or reminding ourselves of the title or the focus of the episode about how working for clients can like just cause anxiety. And like I felt it in my body.
Totally. Yes. I can relate on so many levels,
Yeah. Well, before we jump in there, I'd love to give you a chance to introduce yourself to the audience and talk about what you do and talk about your podcast and give us a sense of who you are.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So again, I'm really excited to be here. This is an honor. I run my own social media management agency. I've had my business for about 4.5 years now. And since then, we've also pivoted to intuitive business coaching and consulting. So we have several different arms of Meraki Media Management. That's what my company is called. And yeah, my End in Mind podcast, it's really about personal development for entrepreneurs. So we talk a lot about mental health as a business owner, how to balance things like what we're going to talk about today, clients, just every day to day. You know, when you're an entrepreneur, your work life and your regular life tends to very much so overlap. So talk about ways to manage that and how to let the flow continue, even though, you know, we're all on this roller coaster of life and business.
Hey, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm curious, did you go to business school or how did you learn how to like actually run a business? And when did introducing mental health as a part of that effort come into your world?
Yeah, so I went to James Madison in Virginia. I studied PR down there. So I have a public relations degree, and then I also have a minor in writing, rhetoric, and technical communication. So that's kind of where the marketing started to come in. And a little bit about my story, I actually worked for a local nonprofit, and we launched a campaign for them that really took off their social media. We went from 18,000 followers to 500,000 followers in a month through a giveaway we launched.
Oh my goodness.
It was wild. You know, I'm like 22 out of college. I have no clue what I'm doing. I just launched this campaign. It was the first year and we had that type of turnout. I was like, okay, I'm pretty good at this, you know. I'm gonna give this a go for myself. And my grandfather was an entrepreneur. So I definitely had the backing from my family, like support wise. Of course, they were very skeptical. I'm 23 starting a business out of my mom's basement, you know, who wouldn't be skeptical at the time. But yeah, then it was pretty natural from there. I had to learn a lot. Being an entrepreneur, you have to be learning, evolving. Which can be exhausting. You know, I'll be honest, it's a lot, but that's why managing your mental health is so important with what we do specifically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good for you too. I mean, 22 is so young to be out there starting a business. I mean, that takes so much bravery.
Thank you. It was kind of like I was acting like a different person. Like I had to put on this mask when I first.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was not me, you know, even looking back at those old videos, I'm like, oh gosh, yikes, you know, it was a lot of like fake it till you make it. And the mask was definitely on. And it wasn't until 2020 that I took that mask off.
Wow. Just Bruce Wayne confessing to being Batman, right? Just that was me the whole time.
That was kind of how it felt like emotionally, you know,
Yeah.
even though for the viewers, like they might have not picked up on it, but for me, it was okay. Now I'm being myself and I can be enough just being me, you know?
Oh man, how much money, time, you name it, goes into people just being able to say that sentence and like fully embody it, right? That's everything that we're looking for, right? I'm me and I'm enough.
Yeah. Oh my
That's a
gosh.
beautiful thing.
It's everything. Not to say that I feel like that every day, but most of the time, you know, that for sure.
Absolutely. So let's talk about working for clients. You know, my experience creating video and writing and Photoshop work, and I've done a little bit of PR and stuff like that. It can be so stressful. And I think what it comes down to is a lot of it is about control, right? You can plan, you can execute, and then a question comes in at not even like the 24th hour, the 20, like way after something needs to be delivered. And so I'm wondering if that's your experience. And if so, how do you manage that lack of control, you know, when you're producing something for a client?
Yeah, this is such a great question. For me, it came down to like believing that I was enough away from, and that was a huge learning curve. There's even still days where I'll get sucked into the analytics of a client's, for example, this week, one of my clients, her insights are down. Instagram's doing updates. They have evolutions coming. It can sometimes affect their back end. I've been dragging my feet on telling this client that her insights are a little bit down. It's nothing crazy, but I think it's also, we build it up in our heads to be a bigger problem than it actually is. So when I'm honest and I'm just me and I explain to them, hey, these updates are coming up or this is what's happening, they receive it very well. You know, they're like, awesome, Caitlin, we're just happy that you're managing our stuff and we don't have to be on social media.
That's incredible because like if it was me, I'd be like in the shower having that conversation and that person's just like digging into me. It's great to just remove that step and just have the conversation.
Yeah, like old me, Caitlin with the mask on,
Mhm.
was 100% the overthinker, the freak out. You know, I would have weeks where I would get anxiety before I would do these monthly analysis for my clients. And I mean like crippling anxiety. I know your listeners can relate to that.
Mhm.
Couldn't even work, like I was so nervous to tell them how they were performing, especially coming into it with the story that I have, that I've been able to grow this account to 500,000 followers. A lot
Yeah.
of clients, they were expecting that. And I just had to manage expectations early on as well. So I learned I can pitch myself that way. And then I have to explain, what's realistic, which might be 30 to 50 ideal client followers a week, which is multiply higher than what they're doing now with doing nothing. Really just getting more perspective, releasing the outcome with the sense of I don't have to overthink the outcome because it's going to happen no matter what I do. As long as I put in the work, I'm doing my part.
Absolutely. Just as an aside here, I'm taking notes for future questions. So if I'm looking down, just because I want to not forget something. So you have my full attention. Okay. I always feel anxious about looking away at times, but I don't want to forget these questions. So based on what you said, I had two things pop into my mind. You're describing this moment where I'm going back to the Batman metaphor and Bruce Wayne, right? You have these two things. What was it that caused the days of crippling anxiety leading to the joint Caitlin that we see here?
Yeah, I would say it was a lot of bad clients. Like, I'm just going to be honest. I had to realize who my people were and who was going to treat me like I was treating them. Because a lot of clients, unfortunately, don't manage their mental health. They don't think about really, does the results lie in the numbers? Yes, of course, we're marketers. But if something's failing, we can just learn from that. It's just another opportunity for learning. It's not an opportunity for beating ourselves up or beating up the person that ran the campaign. I had to find clients that were doing the mental health work that I do, that were on my same level, energetically, business-wise, but also emotionally. And that can be challenging. I used to ask myself, like, do these people even live out there? This unknown that I'm kind of trucking towards as I'm taking off my Batman mask was like, I was so afraid, is this the right decision? Do people even talk about this? People embarking on this journey ahead of me. And I just had to trust that they were, and they're there. All my clients are so lovely now. And even when I get anxiety, they'll pick up on it right away and they'll just say, you're doing a great job. Just unplug for the rest of the day. Like, don't worry, your team's got it. I also have a lovely team that supports me. So
That's a big help, I'm sure. Yeah.
it's huge shift.
Well, first of all, I'm just so impressed by your maturity, right? It's rare to see someone have such a clear understanding of who they are and what they need and asking for that, right? That's half the battle, right? So that's awesome. I'm so happy to see you in that position.
Thank you so much. That means the world.
Yeah, absolutely. But so another thing, I think it lends into what we were just talking about there, though. There's sometimes this mentality that in society people take on, well, I'm paying you. So, in my mind, that means X, right? It's just that like I've purchased you. How do you deal with that? Because that when that's happened to me, you feel it's a shot to your self-esteem. It's a shot to your work. And you can just, as you're working, you're just repeating it in your head and you can get stuck in that like cyclical thinking of a negative experience.
Yeah. Yeah. This goes back to like an old saying that my mom used to tell me before I would go into school. School caused me a lot of anxiety as a child. And she would always say, like, if somebody's picking on you, it's about them. If they're saying something, that really isn't true or isn't factual, it's probably just a reflection of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I have to remind myself of every day.
Yeah.
Even if this client is perceiving as if they purchase me, purchase my company, purchase my team, then I get very protective over them. It's really about me setting that boundary early on and saying, hey, listen, we're your social media manager. Here's where you have access to us. Here's when we aren't online. The weekends are sacred to us. The evenings are sacred for us to be with our families. And just finding ways to position myself and make it very clear that, yes, you are working with us. We are an extension of your brand and we're honored to be, but we're not going to kill ourselves over Instagram, And that was a huge overcoming again of a huge other belief. I thought that this was me. If I was failing the client, my business was failing,
Mm-hmm.
So making that separation was huge for me and for the client.
One of life's mysteries is that birthdays always find me unprepared, catch me unprepared. I don't go on Facebook as much, so I don't notice them as much. But I want to express my love and appreciation for friends and family. That wasn't part of the copy. I'm just saying it. Year after year, month after month. Even when I see it coming, I'm not ready. Am I a jerk? Yes and no. Why do things have to be so black and white for you? But I've got great news, friends. Introducing monthly card subscriptions from the Cardist Studio. Join the service that delivers the card and the stamp that you'll need to your door. No more errands. Who wants more errands? I don't know why, but I'm starting to think of errands as a kid's name. Errands, go back to bed. Okay, but here's how it works. You choose your categories, from birthdays and celebrations to love and encouragement, or select their full collections and have those thank you notes and just because cards at the ready. Those ones are always so nice. Like when you get a card for doing something and it's just like a small little heads up or token of appreciation, it genuinely makes you feel really good. And best of all, you would never get caught cardless again. Let me repeat, you'll never get caught cardless again. Try to say that a bunch of times in a row. You'll never get caught cardless again. Monthly card subscriptions from as little as $8 per month for the card and the stamp. Delivered to you. TheCardistStudio.com shop subscriptions. And you can use the promo code AnxietyPod for 15% off your originating order. A lot of these things we touched on in before listening to the clip here, but one of the things I wanted to ask you about is you have this aspect of your company that you want to use social media to promote yourself. Does that alone give you anxiety? And I know recently you had some pushback from some like right-wing assholes. So I'm wondering what does social media feel like working on for you? And if you could tell the listeners about this incident, I think, that'd be something of interest.
Yeah, as a startup, we have a very limited budget for marketing purposes that we can work with. So a lot of it comes down to social media, which is obviously free for everyone, unless you start paying like a company to run it for you. Since we're not in that position, I'm doing it mostly myself. We do have a small team who kind of gives us suggestions on what to do, and they kind of come from their marketing company. So they're like, oh, based on trends, like you should do this type of post, this type of post. And what we've noticed is the engagement on those is less than the posts where we do. They're very reactionary to current events that are happening right now and kind of our perspective as a platform to educate and empower people on identity.
I know for me, making content for this podcast gives me a lot of anxiety, and I don't really like putting my face out there.
but it's something that you do often, and I'm curious if that affects you in any way.
Yeah. So I remember there was a time when I would associate the worth of my work, this is especially when I had like my illustration account, the worth of my work to the number of likes that I would get.
Mm.
And then a friend told me something. She asked me, "Do you make any money from your Instagram account?" And I said, "No." Then she said, "Then you should be putting almost 0% of your effort into that." So it taught me, okay, I need to only value social media from what I get out of it. And we realized that in our startup company, we do sell toys and games as tools to teach kids about identity. If we're not selling products from the social media thing, we shouldn't be investing money and time into it. But what we are doing is brand building. So then we have to assign like a value to what we're getting out of that brand recognition. And I think part of that is also creating a voice for yourself on there. And we've done everything from we've tried like a whole bunch of things. We're just throwing things at the wall.
Yeah.
And the one thing that we noticed that does work is us commenting on social issues that are present right now in the news. So for example, we did an event at Queen's Pride last weekend, and I put a reel together about our experience there, like just setting up and seeing all the great energy there, and what a fantastic day it was, to celebrate LGBTQ plus Pride. And then somehow it just ended up on right-wing Instagram. So all the trolls came out and they were just throwing like nasty comments here and there, just saying very ignorant things. I remember someone told me like, "Oh, when you get those bad comments, just hide them, delete them." But me, a glutton for attention, was like, "No, this is engagement. I'm
It
gonna
is,
write
yeah.
back." So I commented back on them. I think what was one that I said? So they said to me to have a horrible weekend. So I said, "Oh, it's too late. It's over." And it was grand and gay. And then another person posted signs of a woman flipping through signs to say no, no, no. So I said to him, the signs were upside down because it was on. And then he told me that your quote, historicons on you, apostrophe RE, way to hell, on your way to hell. So I corrected him and said it was your. So this is I've because we talk about LGBTQ plus identity, I've been called everything from like a pedophile to like a groomer
Oh my
to
God.
being told I'm going to hell. Luckily, I've gotten over like my Catholic guilt and that doesn't faze me at all. But also when you click on these people, you see they have like no followers. They're just trolls out there and they're spewing out their own hate. And we're an organization that's not about hate. We're about promoting self-worth. And it just wouldn't be in us we are out there to create representation that people deserve to see. And if we don't stand up to the bullies, I don't think that's the message that we want to send to them. Because as awful as it is, there will always be these hateful and spiteful people, but we take a position in our work and we have to do that through all channels, including like social media, where we're saying like, listen, you can say this, but it's not, we have thick skin. It's not going to pierce us.
Yeah, that's great. It's also right when you're talking about like Stonewall and other amazing events like that. It's got to be tough not to take that energy, right?
But it's also just incredible to see what people will say to you when they perceive anything as being what we consider human and what they consider being like woke. So my business partner is disabled and we talk a lot about disabilities and disability representation and just people go after people with disabilities. I'm like, they're just humans trying to live their life. And I think that's the same for all the topics that we talk about. And it's just kind of shocking to see that there are these.
People who are willing to expend energy on something so silly to be hateful about.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's like
just
it
people
takes.
living their
You know
lives.
what? I think it goes back to the times when you care about things that, in the great scheme, don't really matter. Because I
Mm.
remember like going home from the office at my architecture firm and just thinking about like, oh my God, how can I change this? How can I make it right? Like I have to get this right. Like I have to use the right material and everything. And then it's like it's taking this person's effort to go find that GIF that's going to say something hateful, or to go. Sorry, I know I said GIF, and that's going to
I
offend
was
people.
waiting to say, I'm going to say something hateful to you for saying Jim.
Yeah. Or like to come up with the words to say like, "Oh, you're going to hell." That takes energy, and that can't be positive energy. When I get these comments from them, like luckily I have thick skin and I find them more entertaining than hurtful or harmful. And I think it just gives an opportunity to laugh it off and give people an example. Like that's what you can do when haters come at you. If you have haters, you're doing something right.
Right. There you go. Put it. That's a quote right there. That's a bumper sticker. Rajiv Fernandez. Well, Rajiv, this has been an incredible conversation. We're gonna do a second episode on this, so I look forward to that one. And before we leave here, I just want to give you the chance to talk about any social media handles or websites that you want people to check out.
Thank you. I had a wonderful time talking to you today. I would suggest everyone to check out Historicons. It's at Historicons, HISTORICONS. And we are just trying to make the world a better place. And we're trying to create the representation that we wish we had as kids. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of people can get behind. So if there's stories you want us to tell, we're working on one about Chinese immigration. I just found out that they built the transcontinental railroad.
Yeah.
So even as an adult, I'm learning a lot, and invite everyone to come join us in learning about shit that they should have taught us growing up.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thanks
We're
again.
like we're like we're like Duolingo for talking to kids about identity.
Oh man, just I've had enough time to relive some of like the terrible shots I made in just atrocious. But again, I mean I had so much fun, so who cares? Having fun is the only thing that matters. It'd be more fun to win once in a while. We've lost every game that we've played in. We're gonna get one. We're gonna get one. But yeah, thank you so much to Caitlin. Thank you so much to Rajiv. Like I said, I think next week is gonna be a 5 things causing me anxiety. Right? It's like the place over holiday thing that I do. I just gotta go on a rant and record that for you. But then the week after will be part 2 of working for clients. Before I get to the weird thing causing me anxiety this week, I just want to remind you of the Buy Me a Coffee link. It's a way to make a donation in the show in the description. Then the Pure Spectrum CBD partnership I have, offering the promo code AnxietyPod for 15% off. If you want to sign up for home delivery of groceries, you can do that with Instacart. Link is in the description. And by signing up that way, you're telling Instacart that this show sent you there, which helps support the show. And then the Carta Studio also offers the promo code AnxietyPod for 15% off your initial order. So normally with the anxiety, the weird thing giving me anxiety this week, I like to, mention something that causes me anxiety. In this instance, I'm just going to post a win. Let's go with a win. Let's switch it up. 2 weeks ago, we went to go see a movie, and I was so anxious. Wedding stuff or just having to sit there without being able to talk to anybody, right? Like being able to just focus on the screen was causing me anxiety. Not being able to be on my phone was causing me anxiety. But then this last weekend, Jamie and I went to see the new Wes Anderson movie, Asteroid City. Very good. Thank God. It's just so nice to watch a movie that's not a Marvel movie. I've loved Marvel movies, but it's just this. It's too often. It's too much. Stop it. Stop it. Sound like Arnold. Come on, stop it. Create the original movies. I'm so sorry. It's just the losing. Alters my brain. But yeah, watching Asteroid City, I learned my lesson. I learned what was working and what wasn't working for me, and I was able to just enjoy the movie. And isn't that like the goal, right? To enjoy your life. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that like one week I was having a problem, the next week not so much. Maybe there's something to this mental health stuff. I guess we'll see. Well, as always, thank you so much for listening. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.